Hello and welcome to my FA Cup third round predictions. Thanks so much for tuning in to do this one, and I really do hope you enjoy. If you do, make sure you leave a like and hit the subscribe button on the way out as if you are new. But we have some amazing fixtures. The sort of timing are a little bit weird, a little bit off if you ask me. There are games, like a lot of games kicking off at 12:30, some games kicking off at 3 as normal on a Saturday, and then some games kicking off at 5:30, like several games. There's also games kicking off at 2 o'clock, several games kicking off at 2 o'clock as well on Sunday. So it's a little bit confusing, but let's start off with Friday night's game between Tranmere and Tottenham. This one is live on BT Sport, and it's between a League 2 club and the Premier League Tottenham. Now, in the last 5 games, there's been 2 wins for Tranmere, 2 draws and 1 defeat. One of those wins was against Southport, who they beat. They also beat in the first round. It was Oxford City they knocked out. Tottenham are yet to play in this. Tranmere, as for a season, it's not going too bad considering they're back in the league for the first season. They are just outside the playoffs, 3 points off the playoffs, and under Mickey Mellon they are doing extremely well, somebody that's had several promotions already from League 2. Personally, I think Tottenham will just have simply too much for Tranmere here. I'm going to go for a Tottenham win. I'm going to go 3-1 to Spurs, and they would advance to the 4th round of the FA Cup, and I bet they are absolutely delighted with that tie, particularly when there's been so much games being played. Having a game where you can rest a lot of the big players like Eriksen, Harry Kane, they will be really delighted with. However, they did struggle against Newport and Rochdale last season, drawing both games, so that is something that they need to keep in mind for this tie against Tranmere. Next, we go to the 12:30 kickoffs on Saturday, and the first is between 2 Premier League sides, Bournemouth and Brighton. So these two are both in very bad form. Bournemouth, they've only won 1 of their last 5 games, and that was indeed against Brighton 2-0. Brighton, their form isn't too much better. They've beaten Everton, they've drawn against Arsenal, and also 3 defeats in those 5 games. Personally, I think Bournemouth will have a little bit too much for Brighton at home, so I'm going to go 1-0 to Bournemouth. But Bournemouth do struggle in these games. They got knocked out to Wigan last season, I think it was, so that is something they need to keep in mind. But I think they'll have enough to beat Brighton 1-0. Burnley will be entertaining Barnsley. Burnley are really struggling in the Premier League. They are currently in the relegation zone as of recording, and have won 2 of their last 5 games, including hammerings against Everton and also a 3-1 defeat against Arsenal. Barnsley, they are doing very well. They are currently in the playoffs in League 1 under new manager Daniel Stendel. They have won 3 of their last 5 games with 2 draws as well. Coming up against some tough opponents, the likes of Portsmouth, who are top of the league, Luton, that are having a very good season, and Charlton, and also beating Peterborough as well. I think this one will be really tough for Burnley. I really do. So I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to go 1-1, and Barnsley taking them back to Oakwell. I think that would be a very good point indeed. Well, a draw even. Manchester United versus Reading. This game is on the telly for some reason. I think it's an absolute joke, as I always do, the fact that this game is on. Reading, they're struggling so much. Last time they won was in November, the start of November, so they've gone over 2 months without having, 2 months without having a win in any competition. Their last 5 games, they've had 2 draws, 3 defeats. It's not good. Manchester United, they've totally turned things round under new manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. A 5-1 win against Cardiff, a 3-1 win against Huddersfield, and a 4-1 win against Bournemouth. This could be absolutely the best thing that could have happened to Manchester United. They're going in against sides they sacked after Liverpool, and they're having sides that they should beat. They did meet a couple of years ago in the Cup, and they lost Reading 4-0 that time to Manchester United, and you can't expect anything other than a hammering. Reading are in terrible form. Manchester United are going well at the moment. I'm going to go 5-0 to the Red Devils. I don't understand why that one's on. It's an absolute joke. Sheffield Wednesday versus Luton. Now, a couple of weeks ago, if you'd have asked me, I'd have gone for a Luton win. Luton doing very, very well in League One. They have won 3 of their last 5 games. They've drawn their last 2. And Sheffield Wednesday, they've sort of started to turn things round. After that 2-1 defeat to Swansea, they decided to sack Jos Lukai and decide that Steve Bruce is the man that they're going to replace him with. He hasn't been confirmed as of right now yet, but it is expected that he will be confirmed in the next few hours. Since then, they have beaten Preston and Middlesbrough both by the solitary goal, and then also draws against West Brom and Birmingham, 2 sides that are doing very well, especially West Brom. Probably should have held on for all 3 points there. I'm going to go for a Sheffield Wednesday win. I think that they'll have just too much for Luton. This one could be tight though. I'm going 2-1 to Sheffield Wednesday. The next game is involving where I was born, which is Shrewsbury taking on Stoke City. Now Shrewsbury, they were really, really poor at the beginning of the season, and they decided to sack manager John Askey. And since then, they have been a lot better, both with Danny Coyne, the goalkeeping coach in charge of caretaker, and now Sam Ricketts from Wrexham as well. So they are absolutely delighted with how things are going. So they needed a replay to beat Salford, and then they had Scunthorpe in the next round, and they won that game 1-0. Only 1 goal in that game. Stoke, their form was going okay, but now it seems to have fallen off the edge of a cliff again. It's 2 draws, 2 defeats and 1 win in their last 5 games, beating Millwall. Personally, I know this is going to sound a bit crazy, but I think Shrewsbury will actually beat Stoke. I think that they'll beat Stoke, and I think that will be the end for Gary Rowett as manager. I think that they will beat Stoke, which will be an absolutely big win for Shrewsbury. And they have had many FA Cup shocks in recent years. I remember when they went to Arsenal, and they've also hosted both Chelsea and Manchester United in the last few years. So I think they'll have enough to beat Stoke. So that's one of the shocks I'm going for this round. West Brom take on Wigan. This is simply a championship game. Basically, both are at the same level. They met each other a couple of weeks back on Boxing Day, and it finished 2-0 to West Brom. West Brom are going very well. 3 wins, 1 draw and 1 defeat in their last 5 games. However, they did lose that game last time out against Blackburn Rovers. Wigan, they're in terrible form. 4 defeats in their last 5 games, only 1 point in that time. Really, really poor. Personally, I think West Brom will win simply because Wigan are so poor at the moment. I'm going to go 2-0 again to the Baggies. Final 12:30 game is West Ham versus Birmingham. This one could be very, very interesting indeed. Both sides are in decent form, to be fair. 3 wins in their last 5 games to West Ham, but did lose to Burnley. Birmingham, they have unbeaten in their last 5 games, 2 wins and 3 draws in those 5 games. But I think this one will be a step too far for Birmingham, because West Ham are a decent side with the likes of Anderson in particular has been very, very good. So I'm going to go 1-0 to West Ham. Next we have the 3 o'clock games. Accrington Stanley versus Ipswich. Now Ipswich are in terrible position at the moment. They're rock bottom of the championship, and I can't see them getting out. They've lost their last 3 games to QPR, Middlesbrough and Millwall, and have only won 1 of their last 5 games. Accrington Stanley, they're doing alright. They're about mid-table in League One after coming up from League Two, and they are continuing to defy the laws that football are made. The fact that they get so little crowds, that they have so little funds, and still are up there with the likes of Sunderland and Portsmouth. They've done that absolutely amazing. They have won 2 of their last 5 games, beating Shrewsbury Town and Plymouth Argyle, and defeats against Bradford City, Peterborough and Southend. In the FA Cup, they beat Accrington Stanley 3-1 and beat Colchester 1-0. Both sides are in the division below. Now, I think Accrington will win. I think that they'll have enough to beat Ipswich. I'm going 2-1 to Accrington Stanley, which would be an absolutely brilliant result for them. Aston Villa take on Swansea in another championship tie. both sides will be looking at advancing. Aston Villa, they have drawn 3 of their last 5 games with a win and a defeat in those games. Swansea, they have lost 2 of their last 5 games, 2 wins and 1 draw. They previously played each other on Boxing Day and they ran out 1-0 winners, Aston Villa, at the Liberty Stadium. I'm going to go 1-0 to Villa again. I think they'll have enough to beat Swansea. The next game is as follows: Bolton versus Walsall. Now Bolton, they are struggling in the Championship. They are in 1 win since August. That came on Boxing Day against Rotherham. Walsall, they started off really well, but since they beat Sunderland in round 2, it hasn't really happened for them. 3 defeats, 2 draws in those 5 games. Simply 2 sides out of form, 2 poor sides. I'm going for a Bolton win because they're the home team. I'm going 2-0 to Bolton. Brentford will take on Oxford United. So Oxford, they did start the season very poorly, and they are still in the relegation zone in 22nd place in League One. Brentford, they started the season like a house on fire under Dean Smith. Dean Smith and Richard O'Kelly left for Aston Villa, and since then it's gone pretty downhill. But in the last few games, they have started picking up some points. Now, beaten in their last 4 games, a win against Bolton, and then draws against Bristol City, Birmingham, and a very good draw against Norwich City. Oxford, they've lost their last 3 games in a row. Southend, Bristol Rovers and Plymouth all they lost to. And the last time these 2 met each other, it finished 4-0 to Oxford, which is interesting. Personally, because Brentford are the league above Oxford, I think that's why they'll get the win. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Brentford. Chelsea play Nottingham Forest. This is going to be a tough test for Maurizio Sarri in his first FA Cup game. Chelsea are flying, 4 wins out of their last 5 games. Nottingham Forest, they've only won once in their last 5 games after a struggle Christmas period for Nottingham Forest. They beat Leeds 4-2 and they were down to 10 men, but that doesn't matter. And the last time these 2 met, they met in the EFL Cup, the League Cup, and then Chelsea won that 5-1. I'm expecting another hammering for Chelsea. I'm going a 4-1 win over Nottingham Forest. And next we have Derby versus Southampton. This one could go either way. Derby, they're going very well. They're in the playoffs in the Championship. Southampton are struggling down the bottom of the table of the Premier League. 3 draws, 1 win and 1 defeat in the last 5 games for Frank Lampard's Derby County. Southampton, they've had 2 wins and 3 defeats in their last 5 games and have lost their last 2 games in a row to West Ham and Manchester City. I think this one will be tight, but I think Southampton will have just enough. Ralph Hasenhüttl, he's turning things around, and I think they'll win. I'm going to go 2-1 to Southampton. The next game is Everton versus Lincoln. Now this is going to be interesting. Can Lincoln, who shocked Burnley, who got to the 5th round against Arsenal, can they take on Everton? Everton have won just once of their last 5 games, at 5-1 hammering over Burnley. Lincoln, they are top of the league in League 2 and have won 3 of their last 5 games. I think this one, I don't think there'll be a lot between it, but I think Everton will have just too much for Lincoln. I do hope Lincoln can get something from this game and turn it back to the Central Bank, but I don't think they will. I'm going to go 3-1 to Everton. I think they'll have just too much for Lincoln, but it'll be a very tough test for Everton. Fleetwood versus Wimbledon, 2 sides that are playing in League 1, an all League 1 clash. Fleetwood, they are doing fine in League 1, but it's not really happened for Wimbledon, who are currently bottom of the table, 5 points adrift at the minute. So Fleetwood, they are in 11th place and have been around the playoff positions before now under Joey Barton. Personally, I think this one will be a Fleetwood win. I'm going to go 2-1 to Fleetwood. I think they'll have plenty against AFC Wimbledon. Gillingham take on Cardiff. It'll be interesting to see what kind of side Gillingham put out. Gillingham, they have been struggling in League 1 and are just outside the relegation zone. Cardiff are just outside the Premier League relegation zone as well. Gillingham, they've won 1 of their last 5 games and drawn 1 of their last 5 games, and it is the same story for Cardiff. Personally, I don't know how this one will go, but Cardiff being the Premier League side, they should see off Gillingham, so I'm going to go 3-0 to Cardiff. Next game, Middlesbrough versus Peterborough in the Borough Derby. Middlesbrough, they are going okay, I guess, in the Championship. Peterborough are going very well. They're in the playoffs in League One. Middlesbrough, they have had 2 wins, 2 defeats and 1 draw in their last 5 games. Peterborough, 1 win, 2 defeats and 2 draws in their last 5 games. The thing is, Middlesbrough actually lost to Burton, and I'm going to go for another shock here. I'm going to go for Peterborough to knock out Middlesbrough at the Riverside Stadium. I'm going 1-0. Next, we have the 5:30 games, and the first is Blackpool versus Arsenal. Now, Blackpool are mid-table. They're just above mid-table. They're in the top half of League One. Arsenal, you know where they are. They're 5th. 2 wins, 2 defeats, and 1 draw in their last 5 games. Blackpool, they have won just 1 of their last 5 games, and that was a 3-2 win over Solihull, and that was after extra time. 3 defeats and 1 draw in their last 5 games. Personally, I think Arsenal will win this. I'm going to go 5-1 to Arsenal. I think that they'll have plenty, and I think Unai Emery will put out a very, very strong side. Bristol City take on Huddersfield, Championship versus Premier League, and I'm going to go for Bristol City. Bristol City, they're in okay form. They've won 2 of their last 5 games and 3 draws, so they are undefeated in their last 5 games. Huddersfield, they've lost every game in those 5 we always look at. So I'm going to go a 2-0 win to Bristol City. I think that they'll knock out Huddersfield, no doubt about it. Crystal Palace will take on Grimsby, and I think Grimsby, this one will be really, really tough. Performance-wise, they're going really well. 4 wins in their last 5 games. Crystal Palace, they've won 2, lost 2, and drawn 1 of their last 5 games, including a great win against Manchester City. Personally, I just can't see Grimsby getting anything. I'm going to go 3-0 to Crystal Palace. Newcastle take on Blackburn. So Newcastle are Premier League, Blackburn are in the Championship. Blackburn, they have won 1 of their last 5 games, 3 defeats and 1 draw. Newcastle, 2 draws, 2 defeats and 1 win. This game is really hard to predict. I'm going to go for a Newcastle win. I'm going to go 2-0 to Newcastle just because they're Premier League, and Premier League sides should always beat the Championship sides. So I'm going to go 2-0 just based on that. Final game of the 5:30 kickoffs on Saturday is Norwich versus Portsmouth. Norwich, they're going well. They are 2nd in the Championship, and Portsmouth, sorry, are leading League One. So that is going to be interesting indeed. Portsmouth have won 3 of their last 5 games. Norwich, 3 draws, 1 win and 1 defeat in their last 5 games. I think this one will be tough. I think this one will go for a replay. I'm going to go 2 apiece. 2 apiece is my prediction. Now we go to Sunday's games, and the first is Fulham versus Oldham. Oldham, they're mid-table in League 2. Fulham, they are struggling. They're in the relegation zone in the Premier League. There can only be 1 winner here, surely. I'm going to go 3-0 to Fulham. Comfortable win. Manchester City take on Rotherham in the Sunday games, and Rotherham, they have only won 1 of their last 5 games, beating Preston on New Year's Day. Manchester City, they've won 3 of their last 5 games, 1 of which was in the EFL Cup. I'm going to go 4-0 to Manchester City. I think that comfortably beat Rotherham despite making many changes. Millwall take on Hull. This is going to be an absolute classic. Both sides are having some a spell of form. Millwall have won their last 3 games. Hull have won their last 5 games. So that's going to be interesting. Hull, though, they are absolutely on fire. They beat Bolton 6-0. They went to Leeds and won. They went to Preston and won. So I'm going to go a 2-0 win to Hull. I think they'll comfortably beat Millwall. Preston play Doncaster Rovers. Preston are in the Championship. Doncaster Rovers are in League One. In their last 5 games each, 1 win for Preston, 3 wins for Doncaster. I think this one will be close, but I think Preston will have too much. I'm going to go 2-1 to Preston. QPR take on Leeds. This one could go either way. Obviously both Championship tides. But I'm going to go for QPR to knock out Leeds. I feel like Bielsa might make some changes and might try and almost go out so they can focus on the league. So I'm going to go for a QPR win. QPR have won 3 of their last 5 games, including 2 draws, so are unbeaten. Sheffield United, they had a lovely tie against National League Barnet. Barnet, they're in the lower half of National League. Sheffield United, they're flying. This one can only go one way. I'm going to go 5-1 to Sheffield United. Woking take on Watford. This game is live on BT Sport. This is going to be a very interesting one indeed. 4 wins in their last 5 games for National League Southside Woking. 2 wins against Hampton and Richmond, 1 win against Billericay and 1 win against Eastbourne. They did lose in the FA Trophy to Maidstone as well. Watford, they're going well. 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat in their last 5 games. Very good indeed. Woking, I want them to do well. I want them to beat Watford, as I always do. I always want to see the shock, but I just can't see it happening here. I'm going to go 3-0 to Watford, and I just think it'll be too comfortable. And then the last game on Sunday is Newport County versus Leicester. Newport County, they did very well last year. They got to, I think it was the 4th round. They knocked out Leeds before playing Tottenham and lost in the replay. They have lost 3 of their last 5 games, only 1 win in that time. The 4-0 win over Wrexham, that game was in the 2nd round of the FA Cup. Leicester City, they've won 3 of their last 5 games, including Everton, Manchester City and Chelsea. So some big wins there. I think Leicester will have just too much for Newport. Newport are currently mid-table. So I'm going to go 3-1 to Leicester City. And finally, the last game is Wolves versus Liverpool. So both sides are in the Premier League, and Wolves lost to Liverpool the last time these two met, a 2-0 defeat to Liverpool. Liverpool, they've won and won and won and won and won and won. They've won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 of their last 10 games. Only defeats coming at PSG. So 9 wins in their last 10 games. That's absolutely brilliant record. I just can't see Wolves winning this one. I'm going to go 2-0 to Liverpool again. And that is my predictions all sorted. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, it's a bit of a longer video. Smash the subscribe button. Like the video if you enjoyed. And I'll be covering all of the FA Cup throughout the weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in. And I'll see you again. My name is Mike. And I will see you soon.